Have you ever wanted to discover what's missing in your life? Metaphysics is available to all and is part of your life even if you don't know it. Welcome to Metaphysics, a view through the veil with Barb Crowley. Together we'll explore the mysteries behind metaphysics and how to use it to have a deeper understanding and advantage in life. And now here's your host, Barb Crowley.
Hi, this is Barb Crowley, and welcome to Metaphysics, A View Through the Veil. Today we're talking again to Christopher McIntosh. Christopher is a British-born writer and historian specializing in esoteric traditions and alternative forms of spirituality. He currently resides in Germany since 1994. Christopher's been on the show before, and we spoke then about his book, Occult Germany. And today we're going to talk about his newest book, The Call of the Gods, which is his personal story of how he evolved. And I've asked him, too, if he will, kind of jump in on occult Russia, since Russia is prominent in our world right now. Thank you so much for being back on the show. I really do appreciate your coming back, and I'm excited about it.
You're very welcome. Nice
Thanks.
to be talking to you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So, you want to start at the beginning of what I say to people, what started to break open your soul to start, to bring you to a different spirituality and a different view of the world.
Well, it's been a very long and roundabout journey for me, which I talk about in the book. I was born in England and more or less brought up as a Christian, but I think there must have been a pagan self inside of me somehow, because I was always fascinated by mythology, the stories about the gods and supernatural beings and all of that. And when I was 21 years old, I had a dream. And in the morning after the dream, I painted a picture of what I'd seen in this dream, which was a procession of Maenads, followers of the god Dionysus, being led by a sort of Dionysus-like or Pan-like figure with a pan pipe. And I found that after many decades, I found it in the attic of my parents' house when I was clearing it out.
Wow, that's interesting. Why would they have that? Any idea?
Oh, it had just been put into storage, basically. So when I see that now, I think, well, that was a sign that somehow I had a pagan self within me.
Right.
But in the meantime, when I was a student at Oxford, I got interested in astrology, and through a fellow student, and I started reading about astrology and casting horoscopes and so on. And then my first book was a history of astrology, and through writing that, I came into contact with the whole wider esoteric traditions. And the second book I wrote was a book about the French magician Eliphas Lévy. And well, then I went on to write other books, a couple of books on the Rosicrucians and other things in the esoteric field.
Don't you find a lot of paganism in Christianity? I was brought up Catholic, and they can do ceremony and outfits better than anybody else, but it strikes me so much of what they do is really pagan. Is really pagan.
Many of the old pagan gods were co-opted by the Christian Church and turned into Christian saints. So an example is the Irish saint Bridget or Brigid, who was originally a mythological figure who was turned into a Christian saint. And there are other examples like that. And so in a way, the saints are a kind of they're kind of crypto polytheism within Christianity.
Right. And in the Catholic Church, you have ceremonies where you're using the incense and I believe cleansing the auras, but Catholics would never say that. you know.
Right.
So I'm not sure about Christian, if they have those things. But to me, there's so much paganism in Catholic that it really is pagan that they put a veneer and a new name on.
Yeah, yeah.
And took the power away from us and gave it to them.
Yeah. So anyway, for a long time, my interest in these things was more or less as a scholar and researcher. For a long time, I didn't have any sort of personal commitment to these traditions and ideas. And then at one point, I was living in London. I was living in a part of North London where there were a lot of people who were involved in esoteric groups of one kind or another. There was one group that was practicing Wicca, the neo-witchcraft movement.
Yeah.
There was another that was practicing a kind of Golden Dawn type of magic. And
I have to say, I don't know what Golden Dawn magic is.
Well, it's a form of ceremonial magic based on a group called the Golden Dawn, which was formed around the 1870s in London and became very influential.
Okay, thanks.
So this particular group was very close to where I lived, and so I became involved with them and started taking part in their rituals. So I was gradually taking more and more of an active part. And one of the members of that group was, at that time, she was called Ellie, but she later took on the name Freya Aiswin. And she was, the time I got to know her, she was just beginning to be into the Nordic tradition and the runes. And so that was my first introduction to the Nordic tradition and the Nordic gods. And around the same time, I got to know Hilmar Ørn Hilmarsson from Iceland, who is the head of the Nordic pagan community in Iceland, Asatru, as it's called.
Right.
And I've now visited Iceland 3 times, and so I became I established quite a close connection with Iceland and the Icelandic, the ancient Icelandic form of spirituality.
Was it very different from the British spirituality you were experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, it's the British has elements of it. It's all these traditions overlap with each other. So basically, Iceland was colonized and was colonized by the Vikings, and the Icelandic language is very similar to the language that the Vikings spoke. So and the Icelandic form of paganism is based on the is based to a large extent on the Edda, which is the collection of old Icelandic poems which recount the history of the gods and how the gods have interacted with human beings and so on. So this is you could say the Edda and the Icelandic sagas are really the nearest thing we have to a written source on the ancient Nordic way. So anyway, I became more and more drawn into this particular path, and then at a certain point I emigrated to the States, and I lived for 4 years in New York.
New York City, yeah.
Yeah, working for a department of the United Nations. That time I was married to an American woman who was Jewish actually, and at one point I even considered converting to Judaism. But curiously enough, it was a rabbi who brought me one step closer to the pagan path, because one evening I went to a lecture by him, and he was talking about the difference between monotheism and polytheism. And he said, well, you know what the difference is? He said, in monotheism, everything goes in a straight line. Human history goes in a straight line towards the promised land or the second coming or the last judgment or whatever. But everything is going forward all the time to this ever receding goal. Whereas in polytheism, everything goes in a great circle. And at that moment, I thought, well, I'm a man of the circle, not the straight line.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happened was, looking back at Europe from the vantage point of New York, I realized that basically I'm a North European, and the old gods of Northern Europe are my gods. So that was an important revelation for me.
Yeah.
So then
and that's how you ended up in Germany?
Well, yeah, after 3 years in New York, I moved back. Initially, I moved back to England, but I moved back to London. I was only there for about 6 months before I found a job in Hamburg, in Germany, working for another branch of the United Nations system, UNESCO. And so then one day, I was at the Frankfurt Book Fair, and I ran into an old friend from London days, Frederick Lamond, who had been for most of his life very active in the Wicca movement, the neo-witchcraft movement, founded by Gerald Gardner back in the 1940s or 50s. And he had written a book about his particular path. It was called Religion Without Beliefs. It was his path to his particular form of paganism, namely Wicca. And he was looking for a publisher. And well, to cut a long story short, he eventually published the book himself. And I got a copy from him and read it. And that was really the final thing that convinced me that was the path for me, that the pagan path, not his particular Wicca path, but the Nordic form of paganism that I was into already.
And you were also trained as an historian, and you graduated from university
yes, and I have a doctorate in history from Oxford.
Yeah. So yeah, you were well into the mythology of history.
So then I called him on the phone, and I said, "Well, what should I do now?" And he said, "Well, you could do a couple of things. One thing you could do is to join the Pagan Federation, which is a kind of international organization of pagans."
Mm-hmm.
And he said the other thing you could do is to start what in Britain is called a pub moot. It's a regular meeting of like-minded people in a pub. So he gave me the names of some contacts, and I joined the Pagan Federation, and I started a pub moot in Hamburg with like-minded people, and started to celebrate with them. And well, basically, that's been my path ever since.
But you talk about in your newest book, you talk about the old gods. And what old gods did you feel talk to your soul? So much more than, let's say, our new gods.
Well, you want me to name particular names?
I'm looking at your book, The Call of the Old Gods, but what about them that drew you, that you had to go back to them rather than sit with the religions of our present day? What called you with that? I know you were saying pagan and more the beliefs and the ceremonies, but you do talk about the old gods, and which were many really. So, did you attach to some over others, or what about the
Well,
old gods that pulled you backwards? Well, I call it backwards, but it might, you know what I mean. That was a dumb thing to say.
well, some people ask me, do you really believe in those gods? And well, there are different views about what the gods are.
hmm
Some people would see them as actual individuals
Yeah.
with who one might meet on a walk in the country or whatever. Um, other people would see them as symbols. Uh, other other people would see them as constructions, like in a way, sort of forms of sort of beings that created by people worshipping, well, not worshipping them, but talking about them and focusing on them.
Right. And which
Uh,
way do you see them?
well, I see them basically as forces in the world and in ourselves. Um, and they're forces that you experience. And sometimes, as I say, people sometimes ask me, well, do you really believe in those gods? Do you really believe in Odin and Thor and Freya and so on? And what I always say is, well, my religion is not a religion of belief; it's a religion of experience, and I don't need to believe in them because I experience them the whole time. If you take, for example, the Nordic goddess Freya, she is in a way the Nordic equivalent of Venus or Aphrodite. So she's the goddess of love and passion and the erotic force. And well, we don't need to believe in her because we experience her the whole time.
Yeah.
She's there around us in the world the whole time. So that's basically my attitude to the gods.
Right. So the gods are really the experience of parts of our human nature rather than an outside deity. Do I
Well,
have it wrong?
well, in a way, they're both because um, we've personified these, if you like, aspects of ourselves and aspects of the world. And these personifications have taken on a dynamic and a life of their own. It this is what is sometimes referred to as an egregore, an egregore being a thought form on the etheric plane, created by many people thinking the same thoughts and focusing on the same ideas and symbols. And this is what I think the gods are. They're egregores that have taken on a life and an energy of their own. But that's my view. Other people might have a different view of them.
So you were able then to bring the energies, of the old gods, or view history through the eyes of paganism. So where we talked in past about occult Germany, and we're going to talk today about occult Russia. So you're looking at the history of Russia, but what you're really looking at is the spirituality and then basically Russia through their beliefs and the occult. Am I wrong on that?
Well, yes. I mean, it's the title is Occult Russia, so it's focusing on the spiritual and mystical and esoteric side of Russia. But of course, I had to deal with a wider picture of Russia as well. But the focus is on the occult and mystical side of Russia.
Tell me about, do you mind if we go into occult Russia?
No, not at all.
Okay. You say there's a revival going on of ancient spiritual traditions. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. I feel like we all need to go to the spiritual. Why is there a revival going on?
Well, it's basically the Russians are a very spiritual people, but their spirituality was suppressed during the communist years. But it was so strong that it never died out, and the Eastern Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox form of spirituality was kept alive in a most remarkable way during the communist years, in families, in households, and often in secret. But when communism fell apart, there was a rush to this spiritual urge came out again, and there was a rush to satisfy the spiritual hunger that people had. And many, of course, went to the Orthodox Church or returned to the Orthodox Church, which is once again flourishing.
Yeah.
And thousands of churches have been built or rebuilt. Thousands of priests have been ordained. So the Orthodox Church is flourishing, but also many people flocked to various New Age type of things, like theosophy and anthroposophy, the teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky. Some have turned to the Thelema, the doctrine of Aleister Crowley. witchcraft, and so on. And many have also turned back to the old pre-Christian, um, this old Slavic pre-Christian gods.
Can I ask you, bring you back a little bit to the Silver Age? What was the
To
Silver Age?
the Silver Age was the age around the turn of the century and up to about the Revolution, um, which was a very it was an age that was very rich in terms of culture. There were all kinds of interesting things going on in the arts and in literature. It was called the Silver Age. It wasn't exactly a golden age because it was a very troubled age.
Mm-hmm.
The real golden age was a bit earlier. That was the era of Pushkin, the writers like Pushkin, for example. That was the golden age of Russian literature and Russian and the arts. But the Silver Age was also very rich culturally. But of course, it all came to an end when the revolution came.
Mm-hmm. And they wiped out belief system for their ideology, or they attempted to. Let me put it that way. Is that correct or no? Why did the communists suppress it?
Well, because the communism was based was an entirely it was based on an entirely secular worldview, where spirituality and religion had no place. And I mean, Karl Marx famously said, "Religion is the opium of the people."
Mm-hmm.
So religion was the enemy. It was what was holding society back.
Right.
So it was very, very rigorously suppressed.
Mm-hmm. And yet they maintained it in, in their homes or in their souls, really. I mean, this
Yeah,
kind of outlasted the communist
absolutely.
era.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And as they come back, they're coming back both to organized religion and more unorganized beliefs.
Yes, yes.
And their unorganized beliefs, is it pretty evenly split, or do you know how it's split out?
Well, I can't give you figures, but there are esoteric bookshops that have sprung up
Hmm.
in various Russian cities, and if you go into one of those, you will find books on every kind of form of spirituality, new age and otherwise. You'll
Is there
find
any trend with it? More this than that?
well, astrology, for example, is very popular.
Hmm.
So you'll find lots of books on astrology, on various new age healing systems. So it's a very wide spectrum.
And or in the, like here, um, in the United States anyway, there's quite a bit of the goddess more than,
Yeah,
is that true there as well in their spirituality?
got it. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
There must certainly be forms of goddess worship going on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, how's it working for them? How's it changing society? The reintroduction of esoteric belief and religion.
Um,
Well, it's not the reintroduction because they kind of kept it alive. Maybe not the formal, but they kind of kept it alive, as some have said that we have a God gene in all of us, and
Yeah,
a desire for a larger, a desire for, to connect to that other. So it's been there. It's been there, but as it's become, more accepted, how's it changed their society?
yes,
And how do you see it has? Have they become happier people, or yeah,
yeah, yes.
what has it done for them?
It's undoubtedly made them happier. Yes.
Yeah. And is there a sharing, a universal sharing of spirituality, or do they have a different spirituality?
Well, sharing with whom?
Well, the rest of the world, basically. So, where I talked about in the United States, in the alternative spirituality movement, and when I say alternative, I mean not structured like Christian or whatever. It's
Mm,
very much the goddess,
yeah.
and very much honoring certain belief systems, really. Everything from
Mm,
reincarnation to ability to manifest to
mm, mm,
healing or
mm,
movement or use of energy. Is it the
mm.
same thing there?
Well, before 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 relations with Russia started to get tense
Hmm.
because of the war situation,
Right.
there was a lot of interest in certain forms of Russian spirituality, and there still is to some extent. For example, there's a movement in Russia. It's called the Anastasia movement, or it's also called the Ringing Cedars movement. And this is a very, very interesting movement. It was started by a man called Vladimir Megra, I think 20 or 30 years ago. Um, and he was a businessman, and he was on his way upriver in Siberia. Up, I think the river's called the River Ob. He was traveling up this river in a northerly direction, and he at one point disembarked in a village in Siberia, and there he met. This is his story anyway. He met a very beautiful, radiant woman called Anastasia,
Hmm.
and he went off with her and spent several days with her in a cave, and she revealed to him a whole teaching about how human beings can live a better life. It was a whole teaching about human relations, marriage, sexuality, rearing children, but also about how you how you can run a small holding and be self-sufficient, and how you can run a community and all of that. So he took all this in, and then he went back to Moscow, and he wrote it all up in a book, which became a bestseller, and he went on to write other books.
Hmm.
And well, the upshot was that it started a whole movement, and so there are now uh, the books were translated into other languages, including English.
What's the
And
name of the book? Do you know offhand?
well, this woman is called Anastasia,
Hmm.
and so it's I think it's called. If you look for the Anastasia series,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
you will find it.
This is
Uh,
for any of my, listeners who want to check into it more.
yeah, so it's actually not clear. Um, to, it's not clear to what extent this whole story is really based on fact, but
Hmm.
the the thing is that it inspired many people, and many settlements have now been established, both in Russia and elsewhere in other countries, applying the principles that this Anastasia revealed or established. So that's one example that
Right.
maybe answers your question.
Hmm. Um, Edgar Casey predicted a Russia as a hope of the world.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that a little?
yes. Well, he wasn't the only one actually. Um, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said something similar, and other people have said the same thing. And
What did he say, though, exactly? Why did he call it the hope of the world?
he didn't specify. He just said that something like the hope of the world is going to come from Russia.
And then Churchill famously stated, a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. I love that.
Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes. But I think probably what Casey had in mind was a, a spiritual renewal
Hmm.
that would come from Russia.
And that's what you're talking about with the Anastasia series and this movement, the spiritual renewal.
That's one aspect of it. Yes.
What's another aspect?
Well, there's but one of the things I talk about in the book is the um, theory of hyperborea. Hyperborea being, well, it's the notion that many thousands of years ago there was an advanced civilization in the north, in the Arctic area, before that area became covered by ice. So there was a kind of temperate zone right in the middle of the ice,
Mm-hmm.
the area of the North Pole, and that an advanced civilization lived there. And that then eventually, because of climate change, they moved out and dispersed to other parts of the world. And this theory has a lot of followers in Russia. And there've even been a couple of expeditions to the Arctic coast of Russia,
Mm-hmm.
looking for traces of this Hyperborean civilization, because there's a lot of people, a lot of Russians believe that they are the inheritors or inheritors of the Hyperborean civilization. So I I don't
And
know
what
how
is
to.
their belief, the Hyperborean civilization? What
Well,
are they bringing?
they were in possession of special special knowledge, and yeah, with special they had developed special spiritual capacities and technical capacities. Um, so there used to be. I'm not sure whether it still exists in the present situation of international tension, but
Mm-hmm.
there was um, there was a woman who was conducting Hyperborean tours
Mm-hmm.
to that area of Russia. Um, uh, anyway, that's another example.
And their belief system is their beliefs were basically the same as Anastasia and same as the spirituality or the that we find now that's pretty well going around the world of some pagan beliefs, some new age beliefs, all kind of meshed together, it seems like. But was
Yeah,
that their basis? Or was it pagan with different gods or?
Yeah, there is a whole there's a whole Slavic pantheon of gods.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and as I said, there has been a return to the worship of those Slavic deities. People are going off and celebrating the summer solstice at ancient prehistoric sites in Russia
Yeah.
and so
Is this return to the new age? I'm calling them all new age because there
on.
aren't really good words for this, But
Mm,
is it widespread in Russia? I consider it pretty widespread in the US, not organized, but
mm, mm,
widespread.
mm,
That the basic beliefs, are pretty widespread.
mm.
Are they widespread in Russia?
Uh, I can't quantify that. I don't have enough information
Hmm.
to give you facts and figures.
No, but what's your gut say?
That it is pretty widespread. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I
Mm,
think that's good. I think it's good for the world, for all of
mm.
us,
Yeah.
where um, it's just such a gentle, more exclusive, energy-based belief system. And if we
Mm,
can get it throughout the world,
mm,
maybe a lot of these tensions can ease.
mm.
We can be more of one than fractured,
Yeah.
you know. So, I think that's good. But we're gonna have to close.
Mm.
You want to tell everybody where you can get your new and your old books as well, because you have Occult Germany out there, Occult
Yeah.
Russia, we were just
Mm.
talking about, and then again your new book about the old gods.
Yeah. Well, they're all available on Amazon and other outlets on the internet.
Right.
Well, yeah, or through bookshops.
And they're all published now. Even the old gods is out there published. The Call of the Old Gods has
Yes,
already
yes,
been published.
yeah, yeah. Published by the Call of the Old Gods is published by Inner Traditions.
Hmm. And are you available to people who would like to contact you directly, for more information, or they maybe believe they have some information they'd like to share?
Well, um, let's see.
I'm not so sure about that.
They can contact me by Facebook Messenger. That's probably
Okay. And
the
and what are you just under your own name on Facebook?
yeah, just under my own name. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. I've really enjoyed it, and you've
Oh,
expanded my knowledge and given me
mm.
hope in many ways.
Oh, good. Well,
That this basic, um, what I believe too,
mm, mm,
this basic underlying energy,
mm,
that we're all one is
mm.
gaining legs and gaining traction around the world.
Yeah.
I appreciate knowing that,
Mm.
so that's real helpful. Thank you.
No, you're most welcome.
Yeah, and thank you for being on with me again. I hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye for now.